Good evening, class. It'll be morning for you. We're going to read to you from The Hobbit today for the Read Aloud. I hope you enjoy it. As we're getting around Halloween, so it's good we're reading about the trolls. They have bad language. They're very naughty. They have a lot of silly words for dummy or dumb person, which I'm sure you will hear. They're very uncouth. They speak naughty language that you will not be allowed to use in the class. Naughty trolls. But I hope you enjoy it in the spirit of Halloween coming up. Okay. They were trolls. Obviously trolls. Even Bilbo, in spite of his sheltered life, could see that. From the great heavy faces on them and their size and the shape of their legs. Not to mention their language, which was not drawing room fashion at all. At all. Mutton today, yesterday, and mutton today, blimey! If it don't look like mutton again tomorrow, said one of the trolls. Never a blinking bit of man flesh have we had for long enough, said a second. What the hell William was I thinking of? Bringing us into these parts it all beats me, and the drink running short or small, he said, jugging the elbow of William, who was taking a pull at his jug. William choked. Shut your mouth, he said as soon as he could. You can't expect folk to stop here forever just to be ate by you and Bert. You've had a village and a half between you since we come down from the mountains. How much more do you want? And time's been up our way when you'd have said, thank you, Bill, for a nice bit of fat belly mutton like this is. He took a big bite off a sheep's leg he was roasting and wiped his lips on his sleeve. Yes, I'm afraid trolls do behave like that, even those with only one head each. After hearing all this, Bilbo ought to have done something at once. Either he should have gone back quietly and warned his friends that there were 3 fair-sized trolls at hand in a nasty mood, quite likely to try roasted dwarf, or even a pony for a change, or else he could have done a bit of good quick burgling. A really first-class and legendary burglar would, at this point, have picked the troll's pockets. It is nearly always worthwhile if you can manage it. Pinched the very mutton off the spits, purloined the bear, and walked off without their noticing. Others, more practical but with less professional pride, would perhaps have stuck a dagger into each of them before they observed it. Then that night could have been spent cheerily. Bilbo knew it. He had read of a good many things he had never seen or done. He was very much alarmed as well as disgusted. He wished himself 100 miles away, and yet somehow he could not go straight back to Thorne and Company empty-handed. So he stood and hesitated in the shadows. Of the various burglarious proceedings he had heard of, picking the troll's pockets seemed the least difficult. So at last he crept behind a tree just behind William. Bert and Tom went off to the barrow. William was having another drink. Then Bilbo plucked up courage and put his little hand in William's enormous pocket. There was a purse in it, as big as a bag to Bilbo. Ha, thought he, warming to his new work as he lifted it carefully out. This is a beginning. It was. Trolls' purses are the mischief, and this was no exception. It squeaked as it left the pocket, and William turned round at once and grabbed Bilbo by the neck before he could duck behind the tree. Blimey, bear! Look what I've caught! What is it? Said the others coming up. Lummy if I knows. What are you? Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit, said poor Bilbo, shaking all over and wondering how to make owl noises before they throttled him. A hobbit, said they, a bit startled. Trolls are slow in the uptake, and mighty suspicious about anything new to them. "What's a burro hobbit got to do with my pocket anyways?" said William. "And can you cook 'em?" said Tom. You can try," said Bert, picking up his skewer. "He wouldn't make above a mouthful," said William, who had already had a fine supper. "Not when he was skinned and boned." "Perhaps there are more like him round about. We might make a pie," said Bert. "Here, you. Are there any more of your sort of sneaking in these here woods? You nasty little rabbit," said he, looking at the hobbit's furry feet. And he picked him up by the toes and shook him. "Yes, lots," said Bilbo before he remembered not to give his friends away. "No, none at all. Not one," he said immediately afterwards. "What do you mean?" said Bert, holding him right way up by the hair this time. "What I say," said Bilbo, gasping. "And please, don't cook me, kind sirs. I'm a good cook myself, and cook better than I cook it, if you see what I mean. I'll cook beautifully for you, a perfectly beautiful breakfast for you, if only you won't have me for supper." "Oh, poor little Blighter," said William. He'd already had as much supper as he could hold. Also, he had lots of beer. "Poor little Blighter. Let him go." "Not till he says what he means by lots and none at all," said Bert. "I don't want to have me throat cut in me sleep. Hold his toes in the fire till he talks." "I won't have it," said William. "I caught him anyways." "You're a fat fool, William," said Bert, "as I've said afore this evening. And you're allowed. Oh, and I won't take that from you, Bill Huggins," says Bert, and he puts his fist in William's eye. Then there was a gorgeous row. Bilbo had just enough wits left when Bert dropped him on the ground to scramble out of the way of their feet before they were fighting like dogs and calling one another all sorts of perfectly true and applicable names in very loud voices. Soon they were locked in one another's arms and rolling near into the fire, kicking and thumping, while Tom whacked at them both with a branch to bring them to their senses. And that, of course, only made them madder than ever. That would have been the time for Bilbo to have left, but his poor little feet had been very squashed in Bert's big paw, and he had no breath in his body, and his head was going round. So there he lay for a while, panting, just outside the circle of firelight. Right in the middle of the fight, up came Balin. The dwarves had heard noises from a distance, and after waiting for some time for Bilbo to come back, or to hoot like an owl, they started off one by one to creep towards the light as quietly as they could. No sooner did Tom see Balin come into the light than he gave an awful howl. Trolls simply detest the very sight of dwarves, uncooked. Bert and Bill stopped fighting immediately. "And a sack, Tom, quick," they said, before Balin, who was wondering where in all this commotion Bilbo was, knew what was happening. A sack was over his head and he was down. "There's more to come yet," said Tom. "Or I might have mistook. Lots and none at all is," said he. "No burrow hobbits, but lots of these here dwarves. That's about the shape of it." "I reckon you're right," said Bert, "and we'd best get out of the light." And so they did. With sacks in their hands that they used for carrying off mutton and other plunder, they waited in the shadows, as each dwarf came up and looked at the fire. The spilled jugs and the gnawed mutton in surprise, pop, went a nasty, smelly sack over his head, and he was down. Soon Dwalin lay by Balin, and Feely and Killy together, and Dory and Nori and Ori all in a heap, and Owen and Glow and Biffer and Boffer and Bomber piled uncomfortably near the fire. "That'll teach him," said Tom, for Biffer and Bomber had given a lot of trouble, and fought like mad, as dwarves will when cornered. Thorn came last, and he was not caught unawares. He came expecting mischief, and he didn't need to see his friend's legs sticking out of sacks to tell him things were not at all well. He stood outside in the shadows some way off and said, "What is all this trouble? Who's been knocking my people about?" "It's Trolls," said Bilbo from behind a tree. They'd forgotten all about him. "They're hiding in the bushes with sacks," said he. "Oh, are they?" said Thorn, and he jumped forward to the fire. Before they could leap on him, he caught up a big branch all on fire at one end, and Bert got that end in his eye before he could step aside. That put him out of the battle for a bit. Bilbo did his best. He caught hold of Tom's leg as well as he could. It was as thick as a young tree trunk. But he was sent spinning up into the top of some bushes when Tom kicked the sparks up in Thorn's face. Tom got the branch in the teeth for that and lost one of the front ones. It made him howl, I can tell you. But just at that moment, William came up behind and popped a sack right over Thorn's head and down to his toes. So the fight ended. A nice pickle they were all in now, all neatly tied up in sacks, with 3 angry trolls, and 2 with burns and bashes to remember, sitting by them arguing whether they should roast them slowly, or mince them fine and boil them, or just sit on them one by one and squash them into jelly. And Bilbo up in a bush, with his clothes and his skin torn, not daring to move for fear they should hear him. It was just then that Gandalf came back, but no one saw him. The trolls had just decided to roast the dwarves now and eat them later. That was Bert's idea, and after a lot of argument, they all agreed to it. "No good roasting him now. Take all night," said a voice. Bert thought it was William's. "Don't start that argument all over again, Bill," he said, "or it will take all night." "Who's arguing?" said William, who thought it was Bert that had spoken. "You are," said Bert. "You're a liar," said William, and so the argument began all over again. In the end, they decided to mince them fine and boil them. So they got a great black pot, and they took out their knives. "No good boiling him. We ain't got no water, and it's a long way to the well and all," said a voice. Bert and William thought it was Tom's. "Shut up," said they, "or we'll never have done. You can fetch the water yourself if you say any more." "Shut up yourself," said Tom, who thought it was William's voice. "Who's arguing but you, I'd like to know?" "You're a booby," said William. "And booby yourself," said Tom. And so the argument began all over again and went on hotter than ever, until at last they decided to sit on the sacks one by one and squash them and boil them next time. "Who shall we sit on first?" said the voice. "Better sit on the last fellow first," said Bert, whose eye had been damaged by Thorn. He thought Tom was talking. "Don't talk to yourself," said Tom. "But if he wants to sit in the last one, sit on him. Which is he?" "The one with the yellow stockings," said Bert. "Nonsense! The one with the grey stockings," said a voice like William's. "I made sure it was yellow," said Bert. "Yellow it was," said William. "Then what did you say it was grey for?" said Bert. "I never did. Tom said it." "That I never did," said Tom. It was you. 2-1. So shut your mouth, said Bert. Who are you talking to? Said William. Now stop it, said Tom and Bert together. The night's getting on, and Tom comes early. Let's get on with it. Don take you all, and be stoned to you, said a voice that sounded like woman's, but it wasn't. But just at that moment, the light came over the hill, and there was a mighty twitter in the branches. William never spoke, for he turned to stone as he stooped. And Bert and Tom were stuck like rocks as they looked at him. And there they stand to this day, all alone, and that's the birds perching them, for trolls, as you probably know, must be underground before dawn, or they go back to the stuff of the mountains they are made of, and never move again. That is what happened to Bert and Tom and William. Excellent, said Gandalf as he stepped from behind a tree and helped Bilbo to climb down out of a thorn bush. Then Bilbo understood. It was the wizard's voice that had kept the trolls bickering and quarreling, until the light came and made an end of them. The next thing was to untie the sacks and let out the dwarves. They were nearly suffocated and very annoyed. They had not at all enjoyed lying there, listening to the trolls making plans for roasting them and squashing them and mincing them. They had to hear Bilbo's account of what had happened to him twice over before they were satisfied. Silly time to go practicing pinching and pocket picking, said Bombo. When what we wanted was fire and food. And that's just what you wouldn't have got out of those fellows without a struggle. In any case, said Gandalf. Anyhow, you are wasting time now. Don't you realize that the trolls must have a cave or a hole dug somewhere near to hide from the sun in? We must look into it. They searched about and soon found the marks of the trolls' stony boats going away through the trees. They followed the tracks up the hill until, hidden by the bushes, they came on a big door of stone leading to a cave. But they could not open it, not though they all pushed a while. Gandalf tried various incantations. Would this be any good? Asked Bilbo when they were getting tired and angry. I found it on the ground when the trolls had their fight. He held out a largest key, though no doubt William would have thought it very small and secret. It must have fallen out of his pocket very luckily before he was turned to stone. Why on earth didn't you mention it before? They cried. Gandalf grabbed it and fitted it into the keyhole. Then the stone door swung back with one big push and they all went inside. There were bones on the floor and a nasty smell was in the air, but there was a good deal of food jumbled carelessly on shelves and on the ground, among an untidy litter of plunder of all sorts, from brass buttons to pots full of gold coins standing in a corner. There were lots of clothes, too, hanging on the walls, too small for trolls. I'm afraid they belonged to victims. And among them were several swords of various makes, shapes, and sizes. Two caught their eyes particularly, because of their beautiful scabbards and jeweled hilts. Gandalf and Thorin each took one of these. And Bilbo took a knife and a leather sheath. It would have made only a tiny pocket knife for a troll, but it was as good as a short sword for the hobbit. These look like good blades, said the wizard, half drawing them and looking at them curiously. They were not made by any troll, nor been any smith among men in these parts and days. But when we can read the runes on them, we shall know more about them. Oh, let's get out of this horrible smell, said Feely. So they carried out the pots of coins and such as food as was untouched and looked fit to eat. Also one barrel of ale, which was still full. By that time they felt like breakfast, and being very hungry, they did not turn their noses up at what they had got from the troll's larder. Their own provisions were very scanty. Now they had bread and cheese and plenty of ale and bacon to toast in the embers of the fire. After that they slept, for the night had been disturbed. They did nothing more till the afternoon. Then they brought up their ponies and carried away the pots of gold and buried them very secretly, not far from the track by the river, putting a great many spells over them, just in case they ever had a chance to come back and recover them. When that was done, they all mounted once more and jogged along again on the path towards the east. "Where did you go, if I may ask?" said Thorn to Gandalf as they rode along. "To look ahead," said he. "And what brought you back in the nick of time?" "Looking behind," said he. "Exactly," said Thorn. "But could you be more plain?" "I went out on to spy out our road. It will soon become dangerous and difficult. Also, I was anxious about replenishing our small stock of provisions. I had not gone very far, however, when I met a couple of friends of mine from Rivendell." "What's that?" asked Bilbo. "Don't interrupt," said Gandalf. "You will get there in a few days now, if we're lucky, and find out all about it. As I was saying, I met two of Elrond's people. They were hurrying along for fear of the trolls. It was they who told me that 3 of them had come down from the mountains and settled in the woods not far from the road. They had frightened everyone away from the district. They waylaid strangers. I immediately had a feeling that I was wanted back. Looking behind, I saw a fire in the distance and made for it. So, now you know. Please be more careful next time. We shall never get anywhere." "Thank you," said Thorn. "Good night."